All right, it's been a long time since we've been on the podcast front. Northleft Sports here, Josh and Kyle back again. And we want to review the baseball season so far, post All-Star break, pre-trade deadline. And it's been a really fun season. A lot of really cool things have happened, a lot of surprises, a lot of disappointments. And quickly, we're going to jump right into this and go into the divisions really quick. And the first division we're going to go into is the AL East. As of right now, July 24th, the Baltimore Orioles are leading the division. They're up 3 games on the Yankees and the Blue Jays, and I feel like they're going to win the division, and they're going to hold this down. Kyle Smith, do you think they're going to be able to keep their lead?
I'm very interested in them as a team. I like a lot of their the things that their positional players have been doing, considering the fact that, J.J. Hardy's seen a power sap, Wieters is out, but they've really... and Chris Davis is obviously struggling immensely. And if you were to tell me at the beginning of the season these 3 players are going to struggle, I don't think I would have a very optimistic outlook on the Orioles as a whole. But then you've got guys like Nelson Cruz who are playing out of their minds right now. So
he's slowed down recently.
He has,
but he also has like 27 homers.
Right, which, how many of those games are they not winning without him? Even if he doesn't continue to be this dominant of a player, you're still looking at a guy who won you a bunch of games to start the season off. And, that's really what baseball's all about. It's a marathon. And so if somebody else can kind of pick up that slack for him towards the end of the season, it'll be a good thing. Ubaldo's really kind of recovered from a horrendous start. Bud Norris has been a pretty good pitcher for the Orioles. He's going to be coming back from injury very shortly. How do you feel about them as a whole? I know you just predicted them to win the division out, but do you really see them making a splash in the postseason, or do you think that maybe this is what they're capable of and they should just be happy to even win their own division?
As of right now, I would say they aren't really going to make a splash because they don't have the frontline ace-like pitchers to make a strong postseason run. And even in their own division, the Red Sox have a true ace, John Lester. That's true. Yankees, before Tanaka got hurt, had a true ace. And even Brandon McCarthy, you could argue, would be the best pitcher on the Orioles right now because he's been very good, solid this year, and his FIP and xFIP are a lot better than his ERA. And, his 2 starts with the Yankees have been very good. But I will say the Orioles have had a lot of minor players step up. Adam Jones is having his best year ever. But even Steve Pearce is having a very good year. And in limited at-bats, is has 2.2 offensive WAR in limited at-bats as a platoon player. Nelson Cruz, as you said, has been a monster. And Manny Machado has really stepped up recently within the last 2-3 weeks. Has really started to
slowed him up.
Absolutely, and he's really started rebounding to form. But in terms of their frontline pitching, I'm very concerned with what they're going to do. When your best pitcher going into the playoffs is Chris Tillman, that's an issue. Their bullpen has been very good. Zach Britton has really found his role as a closer type. Darren O'Day has been fantastic as he's been his whole career outside of 2 seasons. And if they potentially could see some development from Kevin Gossman or even potentially see Dylan Bundy return at the end of the year, which is very unlikely, they could get
that guy is not looking good, man.
Yeah, they could get an influx of talent. But is there any way that Toronto or the Yankees or even the Red Sox or Devil Rays could catch them, Kyle Smith?
Without question. And if we were to talk about who I think is going to win this division, I think it's going to be the Toronto Blue Jays. Been extremely impressed with Marcus Stroman this year. He's really done a good job of coming out and doing a good job. I am really impressed with what Aaron Sanchez has been doing. I think he's going to come up in this league and be a good starter, and I don't even know if he's going to get called up necessarily right away, but he's a guy that they can count on towards a stretch, and they've got very good fielding shortstop in Jose Reyes, which is one of the hardest positions to fill in baseball.
His bat has been heating up lately over the last 2-3 weeks.
As you mentioned earlier, Juan Francisco has been playing very solid third baseman. Or third base, not
first base, kind of moving back and forth a bit.
Yeah, and Carcion's kind of has seen his average dip a bit, but his power's still there.
He is on the DL right now.
Works every count he's in to the last minute, and I think that he's great. Colby Rasmus is a solid defender who can take it out at any moment, but isn't having the greatest season regardless, but still. I just think that they're, R.A. Dickey's that guy who could go out in the postseason and strike 12 dudes out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but he has that in him. And I think that Stroman's got it in him with the limited, playbook on him that offenses have. He's got a major advantage, and I think they have the depth necessary to make a serious push. And that's who my pick would be. I know it's 2 years late, Toronto fans, but get ready. This division is yours this year.
I will say that they have the pieces, prospect-wise. They could move in Aaron Sanchez and other B-plus prospects and get David Price if the Devil Rays were willing to move him in division, which I think wouldn't really bug them that much. They just want the best trade they can get if they feel like they're out of it, which at the moment they're not. There's plenty of time. I was all over Marcus Stroman entering the year, and I feel validated. Drew Hutchinson surprisingly had a very good season. He's been getting rocked lately over the last couple starts, but before that he was having a very good year. His K9 is over 8, which is very solid as a starter. Mark Burley is having a fantastic year. No one expects it to continue, but his ERA is still under 3.
And by the way, been awesome. Sanchez did get called up and had his first appearance last night. So he went 1-2-3, scoreless. So we will be seeing him start and potentially be a bullpen ace for them going down the stretch here.
He could have when David Price came up with the Blue Jays originally, he was a bullpen piece, kind of like a K-Rod for the Angels. But the difference is, David Price continued to start where K-Rod was a, potential lockdown reliever. And do you think the Red Sox can come back, or even the Devil Rays? I think the Yankees personally are out of it with their injuries and age, but I feel like Boston has the talent to do it, but they won last year, and I feel like they just have had the opposite good fortune luck that they had last year, and then they're just going to be on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I feel very similar because I think that sometimes when you have a bunch of players overachieve and do something the way they did and win the title, when nobody expected them to do that, I think it just puts a lot of pressure on the next year, and I don't think they really did a lot in the off season to really go out and catch that big fish and really try and make a push this year. I think they sat really contently and tried to be smart about their money, and consequently, guys like Mike Napoli, Johnny Gomes, they're just not playing nearly as well as they were last year. And Pedroia, you mentioned as dropping off a little bit, and I think that everybody kind of had higher expectations for the Bogarts, Middlebrooks rotation. I know you were a big fan of Jackie Bradley Jr. before the season started, and I don't think that's really come to fruition necessarily. Daniel Nava was a guy who added 300 last year, and I don't think that he's really continuing his performance as an older player that kind of broke through last year. So I think that you just kind of saw a culmination of a perfect storm last year with the Red Sox, and I think this year is just kind of a more realistic take on what they are as a franchise. You're not having Clay Buchholz tear it up anymore, even though he really didn't do much towards the end of the season anyways. But still, I think they were kind of counting on guys like Ruby De La Rosa to be a little bit better, and it just didn't really work out for him. And they have a lot of prospects, and there's still a bright outlook for the future because they were smart about their money. They didn't go pay Ellsbury a ton of money.
There's nothing wrong with being a last place team the year after you won the World Series.
No, because you won the World Series.
Exactly.
Pittsburgh Steelers do it all the time.
Yeah, I would say that that team has a lot of tools to be very good next year, but as of right now, they're 9.5 games back of Baltimore. Pedroia is headed down here. Even Ortiz, his power's there, but his average has fallen a bit. A lot of their pitching prospects haven't completely stepped up, the Allen Webster types.
Yeah.
Buchholz hasn't been healthy. John Lester, the whole contract situation has been kind of a microcosm of what this team's season has been.
Yeah.
He's been a top 5 pitcher in the American League, and they just didn't want to pay him, which is frustrating for him, I assume, when he's been so good in the postseason.
And so
come back from
for
Casker. Incredible for that team. He has a 2.5 ERA. He's having the best strikeout rate of his career. He's right there on the tier below the Hernandez and Chris Sale. If you say Hernandez and Chris Sale are 1-2, Lester has an incredible argument for number 3 for AL Cy Young.
True.
And I feel like we both think that Tampa Bay is a good team that just doesn't have it right now. David Price is another Cy Young contender who probably won't get traded during the season, but could really get traded in the offseason. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think at this point it might be a little late.
Yeah.
I
I feel like they wanted that Oakland Addison Russell package,
Yeah,
and they didn't get it, and no one else is going to be able to move that.
Yeah, no, and I think that the Cardinals kind of missed out on their chance to trade for him when they had guys like Shelby Miller and Carlos Martinez, where you didn't know much about them. All
Right.
you knew is they had good stuff,
And they could
have been really good,
Yeah.
and they could have taken advantage of that and made that trade then and had David Price, and those guys really haven't.
Yeah,
Miller's been moved to the pen recently, so
yeah, they could have kept Tavares and traded like Shelby Miller and Steven Piscotty. They could have traded those two and then kept Tavares, and then Miller obviously has had his struggles, but
they could have even just traded Tavares. It's not like he's done that much. I mean, honestly, like they have
obviously their scouting department knows what it's doing.
Yeah, seriously.
So moving on to the AL Central, the Detroit Tigers have a 7-game lead over Kansas City, 7.5 games over the Indians. In my opinion, they are a lock to win that division. Would you agree?
Yeah, not even close.
So we're just going to, Victor Martinez have an incredible year. He's actually out-hitting Miguel Cabrera, who's down a little bit, but he's also on pace for 60 doubles, so he's not having any slouch of a year.
Yeah.
Calvastanos is having an okay year in his first year.
Yep.
Kinsler's had a very solid year in his first year in Detroit. They just traded for Joakim Soria, who hopefully can solve their bullpen issues, and since he was on a team last year with Kinsler and Nathan, there shouldn't be any issues with him stepping in as closer because they're all familiar with each other. But in terms of Kansas City and Cleveland, if you had to pick a team that's going to finish second out of those two, who would it be, Kyle Smith?
I pick Kansas City because they have an elite bullpen and they have a really deep rotation. You've seen guys like Duffy fall off a bit in recently, but at the same time, well, he's been good, but he's been falling off a bit. You know what I mean? And Vargas has been really good. Shields has been as advertised. I think that Ventura has been a solid, if not quite as impressive.
I feel like he's fallen off, whereas Duffy's kept it going.
Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of was
But
watching
he also
the
hits
Duffy
100
start
all
the other
day.
and he was, I don't know, his control was just whack. But
His control's always been whack.
Everyone has those days, so
Right.
I was just mentioning that. Like I said, I really like their bullpen. I thought it was already really good, and I really liked their trade for Jason Frazier. As a Rangers fan, I hate that dude. I don't like watching him pitch. It's annoying as crap, but I have to admit he's been really effective, and he's a gamer. We signed him, brought him in to do what he wanted to do what he did, and he fulfilled that expectation fully, and we got a nice piece out of him. Really happy about it, but good for KC. I wouldn't be that shocked to see them at least challenge Detroit down the stretch, but I just don't think they have the hitting necessary. I know you had Hosmer for MVP, picket signs already printed up and everything, but
it's frustrating.
He's so good.
Yeah,
he's just like.
It's frustrating to see a guy with that good of a walk rate and that much natural power not hit for power.
Is he like the Mike Conley of first base?
Well, Mike Conley as a point guard is better than Hosmer as a first baseman as of right now.
But will he be, though?
He reminds me...
Because Hosmer could still do that. He's still, 24 years old?
Yeah, well, if Hosmer played in Cincinnati like Joey Votto, would he have a 30-home run season in that bandbox?
It's possible.
They're so similar to me because they're both very good defensively. They bring a lot to the table. They're very good average splitters. I mean, Votto probably has a much better eye with his walk rate, but... Yeah, I actually think Cleveland is a very interesting team because Trevor Bauer's been solid with his reworked delivery. Corey Kluber is another legit ace that has not fallen off this season. He's been incredible. He has a very good strikeout rate. He's starting to go very deep into games. Just today, he went 9 innings, 2 hits, 10 Ks, and a no decision. And they have Francisco Lindor coming up. A couple of years from now, they have Clint Frazier. They have a lot of very good pieces on the way. Nick Swisher's been horrible. Carlos Santana's been horrible. And it hasn't mattered because they have one of the quietest MVP candidates in the league in Michael Brantley. That extension they signed him to is looking fantastic.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of pieces, and if Swisher and Santana start to hit, they could make a nice little run, especially to the second wild card spot, to Seattle, who's winning that right now.
Yeah. Duffy, by the way, is not falling off.
Yeah, Duffy's been very good. I like Duffy. My issue is he's already had major injury, and his delivery, he could get hurt at any time, kind of like, numerous other pitchers in the Major League Baseball, the run of Tommy Johns we've had. It's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. And did you hear Darvish's comments on that?
He wants teams to go to like 6-man rotations and have extra days of rest, and it's not going to happen because baseball is too driven by money.
And he was also saying that in Japan, all the balls are the same size, and that baseball, all the balls are different. And he says the thing that puts the most strain on your arm when you're pitching is gripping the ball tight.
That's
And he
also
says that-
coming from a pitcher that throws a lot of splitters, and that's a huge
Yeah.
thing for splitter guys. Look at Tanaka
That's
with
true.
his UCL / Tommy John that's going to happen. They're just trying to delay it.
Right. But, like, I don't know. It's something to consider, though.
Yeah.
The fact that American baseball is so... all the balls are different every time. They're
Yeah.
all slightly different, you know, and that's something to be said, you know, because as a pitcher, it's got to be hard to go out there. You know, what if you're going out there pitching every day and you get a ball that's slipping all over the place and all you're trying to do is get a win for your team and you blow out your fucking arm for a year and a half? You know what I mean? Like, it's something baseball should look into, but that was just a sidebar on the Tommy John.
Moving on to potentially the best division in baseball, much like the NFL, where the NFC West is the best division, the American League West has turned into, at least this year, the best division in baseball. The Oakland Athletics have the best record in baseball, and then the Los Angeles Angels had the second best record in baseball. And the Seattle Mariners, the third place team in the division, are leading the second wild card spot in baseball. So all these teams are doing very well, and some experts pick the Texas Rangers to be the best team in the division. They happen to be the worst team in baseball record-wise.
Yeah.
And the Astros have called up some of the young guys. George Springer's done very well. He's on the disabled list at the moment, but he has incredible power, and he shows a lot of great promise.
Future MVP.
If he could fix that strikeout rate, he could be a future MVP in my mind. Singleton's been bad, but he does show flashes of legit power.
Yeah.
And they've had a lot of pitcher surprise for Houston, so they're on the up and up. But Oakland kind of seems like, at the very least, a lock for the playoffs.
Yeah.
The Angels have a very big lead in the first wild card spot. So looking at those two teams, what have you seen out of them that are very surprising? Oakland made the very big move to trade for Samardzija and Hamill and trade their number one prospect, Addison Russell, to the Cubs. So now the Cubs have like 19 of the top 100 prospects in baseball, and they're still not going to be good for 3 years somehow. So, looking at those two teams, what have been the surprises for you?
I think Garrett Richards has been a big surprise for me. He's struggled since he came up 2 years ago in limited time. He kind of got a real shot to really be the guy last year and struggled in that role. He did not have a good K9 rate at all last year. I want to say he had 135 innings pitched and only 110 strikeouts or something. For a guy who throws 97 and has the highest average fastball velocity in the major leagues, that's downright shoddy. And so his season, I've already put it out to my friend Josh that I am not a fan of Garrett Richards. I don't see him sustaining the success. I think he throws in the plate way too often, or in the middle of the plate way too often. I think the Angels are a ticking time bomb. They have so much offense, but I just think their pitching is garbage. They've been getting results, but I don't necessarily see them being able to have the depth necessary in pitching to outlast the Mariners down the stretch. So, to me, the two teams we should be talking about are the Mariners and the Athletics, because I think the Athletics are pretty much unchallenged at this point, but I think the Mariners are taking that second spot.
As a Mariner fan and the pessimist of the fandom group between the two of us, I completely disagree with you. We have maybe one legit hitter on the entire team in Robinson Cano. Kyle Seager's very good. Kyle Seager's amazing. I love him, but I'm still concerned about his splits. It's very weird that he's hitting so well at home as opposed to not hitting on the road. That's very weird. It's the opposite of the last 3 years.
And opposite of every other hitter.
Yeah, exactly. And Cano's power has been way down, but he also has the highest on base and average of his career, so that's nice to see. We just traded for Kendrys Morales, who's actually been a worse hitter than Corey Hart so far since he's been in 2014. Now, some of that may have to do with missing all spring training and 2 months of baseball, but that's very concerning. Twan Walker, the other day, started on Tuesday, gave up 2 hits, walked 6 guys.
Yeah,
So, if he could just get those walks under control, he could actually be the top 10 prospect some people herald him as to be. James Paxton is on the rehab stint. He was incredible for 3 starts, and he's been out for like 2 months since then, so that's not good. Iwakuma's been okay. He's been worse than last year, but still a very good starter.
Didn't have a great start tonight.
Yeah, exactly. And Felix Hernandez has been, if if you say Kershaw's the best starter in baseball, Hernandez may be number 2.
Yeah.
Right behind, he's ahead of Wainwright. He's right there with Sale and Wainwright.
But think
right
about
behind
that.
Kershaw.
When you get in the postseason and you got to face Seattle, I would not want to face Seattle.
Oh no, their
Because
defense
you
has been
know-
much improved from last
You know
season.
Felix could strike out 12 Angels.
Yeah.
But you know that Jared Weaver's giving up 2 home runs, no matter what. And Garrett Richards is probably going to be the only decent start they get.
Yeah, Weaver's been good, but he's also not their ace anymore, and he's getting paid like it.
Yeah.
And he also had the back issue creep up again, which was an issue a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So that's a concern.
But C.J. Wilson's a
C.J.
contact
Wilson's
pitcher.
an okay guy, but their top line,
They're
like
trading for bullpen all over
yeah,
the place.
Houston Street deal was okay, but they
That's a
traded.
good deal.
They overpaid compared to what Detroit gave for the for Story, in my opinion, because I think Story's a little bit better than Street. But they both had control for 2 years. But let's touch on Oakland before we move on to the NL. How impressed have you been with just their managing of platoons? Brandon Moss is on pace for 30 home runs again. Josh Donaldson's average is way down, and it hasn't really mattered because he's been very good. Coco Chris has fallen off, hasn't mattered. Their catcher platoon may be the best catcher platoon of all time, and Derek Norris and John Jaso.
Which is crazy.
They're managing it very well. Their pitching's been fantastic. Sonny Gray's maybe a 5th spot in the Cy Young for the American League behind Sale, Kluber, Lester, and Hernandez.
By the way, Darvish is still in that conversation.
He's good, but he's not getting the wins for. So in terms of the
Yeah.
vote, and with the team being that bad, he's not going to be
With
in the
his
contention.
K9 so high, though, it's still something to think about.
He's been very good, but he's not. But you got to think
Felix
about.
proved you can have 3 wins and get a Cy Young.
He had 13 and 12, but he also had a better year than Darvish is having right now.
Yeah, he did. Far
But,
better.
So
actually.
looking at the Athletics, are they the best team in baseball? Because let's just get that question out of the way, because they're the best team that's in this division, clearly. Are they the best team in baseball like their record says?
No.
Who's the best
Still
team?
the St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay, I completely disagree, but I also agree that they are not the best team. I would take Detroit.
Detroit's really good, but man, I don't think there's anything more intimidating than Adam Wainwright out on the mound. Molina, Craig,
Molina, who's out.
but he won't be in the postseason.
Craig, whose
Adams,
power's down. Adams, who doesn't have a position.
And as
I'm just
OBP
playing devil's
machine-
advocate. I love
okay.
him. You know that. But
They have the.
what happened to Matt Holliday's power?
He's
He
still
has 7
solid.
home runs.
Still okay. I mean,
He's okay.
He's also a tremendous postseason hitter.
Matt Carpenter's had a much worse season than last year.
Yes, he has. But that's
Shelby Miller's been irrelevant. Michael Walker's hurt, and they have no idea when he's coming back.
Peralta's been solid.
Yes, he has. Lance Lynn's had a very good year, but
Yes,
we're going to
yes.
get to them in a second.
No, I'm just
so
saying.
Oakland just
I, in my opinion, it goes to for me. It goes St. Louis, Athletics, Detroit, because I love Detroit's hitting lineup. But at this point, I have more confidence in Scott Kazmir and Jonathan Gray than I do
Sonny
Verlander. Yes, sorry, not the Rockies guy.
that guy's incredible though. Don't worry, he's going to be fun to watch.
I love him. I just would rather face. I'd rather face Verlander and Scherzer right now. I'd actually rather, if I was Detroit, I'd roll out Scherzer and Sanchez personally.
Well, Verlander's going to start.
He is.
And Detroit's interesting because Drew Smyly's been very good, and so's
Yeah.
Rick Porcello.
Yeah.
And
They're a very deep rotation.
those two have been arguably better than Verlander,
Yeah.
who 2 years ago was the best pitcher in baseball.
Yeah, it's true.
So moving on to the National League East, as of right now, the Washington Nationals, the Atlanta Braves are really fighting it out for 1-2 in that division. Miami's 8 games back. They're probably not going to make a run. The other 2 teams are pretty much irrelevant in terms of making the playoffs.
Yeah.
They have interesting things to talk about, especially the Phillies in terms of making trades. But just in terms of Washington and Atlanta, I have Washington winning that division, and a lot of that has to do with starting pitching and the depth of the team. Bryce Harper is coming back from injury, and if he heats up, that team is loaded.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
what are your thoughts on those 2 teams? And in my opinion, Atlanta, outside of Julio Teheran, their starting pitching extremely questionable.
Very questionable. They made a major mistake not re-signing Tim Hudson. They still have a really solid pen. Right now it's in the middle of the pack of the major leagues, but it's far better than the numbers are indicating.
Craig
Just
Kimbrell
because-
is still the best closer in baseball.
Yeah, if
probably.
they were, and Ventura still has by movement the best slider in baseball, technically, one for a relief pitcher.
And they brought up another Simmons, a pitcher this time, who's throwing 95, 96 and has a very high K rate, but also sometimes doesn't know where the pitch is going, and his walk rate's high as well.
Has Minor been healthy this whole year?
Minor's been okay. He hasn't really had the strikeout rate he had the last couple of years.
And then Wood's been solid too, ish.
But he's not starting. Aaron Harang has actually been their second best starter, which is an issue.
Well, not anymore. That was like the
his
first
ERA
2
is still
months.
3.3.
Yeah,
he's been okay. Irvin Santana had a very good start, and he's fallen off. Justin Upton has actually been their best hitter, which is an issue because Freddie Freeman is kind of in the Joey Votto zone of having very good on base and a low slugging for what you want from your number 3 hitter.
Still hasn't made that all-star.
Yeah, his bat hasn't caught up to his maybe the best corner outfield defense in the majors. Him and Alex Gordon like to fight over that title.
Right.
I will say that Chris Johnson's bat definitely slowed down.
Yeah. Still hitting 270 though, which I like. You know, Simmons hasn't really progressed as the major prospect everyone was kind of like hoping he would be.
Well, obviously his glove has been there, but in terms of hitting, it's been a struggle for him.
It's been a mixed bag.
I will say that the call up of Tommy La Stella has been very interesting. He's hit, his OBP's there. He's been an upgrade over Dan Uga overall.
Yeah.
But he's still, a guy that could fall off at any time. Evan Gaddis, his power's been legit this year.
I love him.
He's just coming off the DL. Defensively as a catcher, not that good.
No.
But his bat more than makes up for it.
Yeah.
But looking at the Washington Nationals, a guy we both were very fond of, Anthony Rendon, the second baseman / third baseman for the Nationals, has been fantastic.
Yep.
He's been probably their most consistent bat, him and Jason Worth.
Yep.
Ryan Zimmerman has adapted very well to left field, and hopefully they don't try to play him at third, especially considering he doesn't want to play third anymore because he understands his throwing issues.
Yeah.
Adam LaRoche has had a nice bounce-back year.
Yes, he has, which we fucking killed him on the podcast.
Yeah, we really did. We were not fans of him, and he's definitely had a good year.
It just deserves, so...
Yeah, we're giving you the props.
Having a bounce-back year, but, I mean, don't think that it's just like something we're going to give you all the time.
Yeah, LaRoche has been very good. And one thing to keep an eye on with this team is the management of Bryce Harper and Matt Williamson has kind of been like poking and prodding him, talking about not running out of base, and he hustles a second and breaks his thumb, and he's out 6 weeks. And
it's been interesting. You're right. One thing I want to talk about the Nats is their second best ERA in baseball in the bullpen. Soriano's been amazing as a closer. Clippard was in the All-Star game. They have a lot of depth pieces all over the place, and like you mentioned, their starting pitching. That's a really tough staff.
How about Tanner Roark has kind of come out of nowhere and been an extremely good pitcher. And of course, the Doug Fister deal was a very good deal for them, and now that he's healthy, he's looked really good. Jordan Zimmerman's been good. Gio Gonzalez has actually been their worst starter almost.
Which is sad.
Yeah.
Crazy because he's been good.
Yeah, Steven Strasburg, his ERA is high, but he also has a 10.68 K per 9, which is psycho, and his changeup is one of the best changeups in baseball.
Yeah.
He's a legit ace who could throw a no-hitter, and it wouldn't surprise me no matter who he's facing.
Right.
And I will say that my boy Tyler Clippard has a 12 K per 9. So you talk about that bullpen, the bullpen's really showing up. But thinking about the other 3 teams, Miami's been fun to watch, but the Jose Fernandez really killed a lot of their vibe. Henderson Alvarez is having a very good year. Yeah. Tom Kohler is having a surprisingly good season. Giancarlo Stanton has been a monster as expected. He's in the MVP conversation, which is funny because the NL MVP is not nearly we'll talk about this later, but it's not nearly the runaway leader that the AL is, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The Phillies could totally blow up their team, and it wouldn't surprise anyone, or they could try to keep everyone, and it wouldn't surprise anyone. And then the Mets have 7,000 pitchers on the way with a lot of really good hitters, and they could be really good in 2 years.
I think they'll be really
And
good.
anything you want to touch on for those 3 teams before we move on to the Central Division?
I've really been impressed by Heckavaria. I mentioned him earlier, batting 277. So OBP is still garbage, but I mean, playing the elite defense and having that bat, right around that spot, he's providing a lot of value for the Marlins. So that's something to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If you had to pick one out of Cole Hamels and Cliff Lee, who's going to get traded within the next week, who would you pick out of those two?
I would probably pick Hamels just because I'm hearing a lot about Lee having some questionable injuries that teams aren't really sure how honest the Phillies are being about. And obviously, you can't get a straight answer with Cliff Lee because he's not really sure he wants to even be traded.
Right.
So I would just assume that.
I would say that Cole Hamels is definitely the better pitcher. I know he's signed long term. He's still young. He had a very fantastic start the other day, and you could get a legit really good haul.
Oh yeah.
Like if the Yankees
if
are
you trade with the Dodgers, man.
Well, even if the Yankees wanted to trade for him, you could get Mesa Williams, Gary Sanchez, and another prospect, and have a very good haul. Shed that contract and really start to rebuild because Rollins is done after next year. J.P. Crawford's coming up. Yeah. They have Manuel Franco, who could be a first baseman, third baseman, outfielder who has legit power. They have some interesting pieces coming up. Dominic Brown, in terms of disappointments, has been one of the disappointments of the season. I think we both were kind of hating on him, but we didn't see this bad of a year. No way. So, moving on.
Bird's been a nice piece.
Marlene Bird could get moved, but I know Seattle doesn't want to guarantee that next year of the contract, and I kind of agree with it because I don't think we're good enough to make the playoffs anyway, but that's a whole different negative view that I could talk about. So, moving on, the NL Central has been a very interesting division to look at. The Milwaukee Brewers, surprisingly, are leading the division, but they only have a 3-game lead over St. Louis and Pittsburgh. Cincinnati's 6 games back, and the Chicago AAA Cubs are 15.5 games back and have 0 shot to make the playoffs. 0.1, technically, according to the playoff odds on ESPN.com, which is very interesting. They just don't want to put 0 chance because they don't want to look wrong. But, so looking at the top 3, because I think Cincinnati's 6 games back, I feel like they have a very low chance of catching all 3 of those teams. So looking at Milwaukee, St. Louis, and Pittsburgh, I know you really like St. Louis, but do you think St. Louis is going to catch everyone and win that division? Do you think that Milwaukee could hold them off with their very good hitting at that home-friendly ballpark? Or could Pittsburgh perhaps make a run with Polanco up now, and Glasnow perhaps coming, and Garrett Cole getting healthy? So what are you thinking out of this 3-headed monster they have in the NL Central?
So this is me crazy. So I said I think the Cardinals are the best team in baseball. I'm not going to back off from that. I really like their bullpen. I think that they have a tremendous starting staff. I like their positional players. I think they're loaded. They have a lot of depth, a lot of interchangeable pieces that I like, a lot of defensive value they can put on the field at any point. But at the same time, I think this is Pittsburgh's year. I think they take the division. I'm really impressed with their pitching depth, both in the pen and starting. I think Charlie Morton's been one of my favorite players to watch this year. I love watching him pitch. He doesn't blow you away with this stuff where the guy can just locate for days. He's got an incredible curveball. I really like watching obviously the McCutcheon show, I guess you could say, as he just pulled up some stats.
McCutcheon is leading the Pirates in average home runs, RBI, OBP, hits, wins above replacement, OPS. Like, this guy, is he going to win the MVP back-to-back? Because there's no runaway winner in the NL, which we're going to get into lately, but he is at least one of the favorites.
No, I hope he does, because he's been amazing, and he single-handedly carries that team on his back. If he doesn't go out there and hit for 320, steal bases, and play good defense, they're not going to be this good. I also think that the emergence, like you said, of Polanco, and the fact that they're going to have Cole coming back, and, Liriano's really been having a really solid bounce-back campaign for Pittsburgh as a whole. Obviously, last year was better, but, he's still being an innings eater. They really resurrected Edison Volquez's career, which I think is awesome because me and you have always been fans of his games. He just walks everyone. It's just kind of like, if you would just not be so afraid and not throw home runs in 3-2 counts right down the middle, like fastballs, you would be good. Just fucking throw that fastball and 1 and 2.
I will say that in the Pirates, in terms of resurrection, Vance Worley, who is a very good starter for the Philadelphia Phillies 2 years ago, has been very good for this team.
Yeah.
And Mark Mellison has taken over the closer role. They traded Jason Gridley to the Angels, who didn't solve their issues, and they traded for Houston Street, as we mentioned. Mark Mellison's been very good. The bullpen's been solid, as you expect from this team. And, I think the Milwaukee's going to hold it down. I've been very disappointed with Pedro Alvarez. Not necessarily his average or his defense. We know those are question marks. His power is way down right now. And I think the defensive and batting average issues mentally are getting to him a little bit because he's not even leading the team in home runs. And before the season, I would have been very shocked if he didn't lead the team in home runs and potentially hit 30 to 40.
Just awful defense.
Do you think that he moves to first base at some point?
Because
he can't play third.
I think he's an American League DH.
There's nothing wrong with that with the power he has, but he has 17 errors the last I checked. I think he's leading the National League in errors.
I feel like
which
that's
is not
like
good,
per game.
of course, per game. So we can't. You talked about St. Louis. Everyone kind of knows about St. Louis because they're really good this year. But I really want to touch on Milwaukee for a second and just mention how good Jonathan Lucroy is and how good Carlos Gomez is. And I know they have a hitting-friendly ballpark, which is nice and awesome, but at the same time, the stuff that those two bring to the table, Gomez with his defense and running in center, and then Lucroy with his pitch framing and defense and hitting as a catcher, he's probably the best catcher in baseball right now, especially with Molina hurt and Posey's bat a little bit down from his MVP form.
Yeah.
And their pitching has been surprisingly, especially in the bullpen, very good. Francisco Rodriguez might be having the Comeback Player of the Year award, and Zach Duke, the failed top 10 prospect of the Pittsburgh Pirates as a starter, has become an absolute lockdown 8th inning guy. And not to mention, they also have other relievers that have been very good, especially Will Smith, who has an 11.76 K9, which is second on the team only to Zach Duke. And they just called up one of their better prospects as a starting pitcher, Jimmy Nelson, who could be a 3-starter in the future. So in terms of Milwaukee, anything you want to touch on before we move on to the NL West?
For how good the Kyle Loesch contract has been for them, it looks like the Matt Garza contract's going to be equally as bad. So, I mean, that's really the only negative thing. They totally scored with Juan Segura in that Zach Greinke trade a few years back. And I just want to say hats off to the Brewers for really believing in their team and the players they had and putting it together. Chris Davis having a solid year, Ryan Braun accepting him and making it easier for him to, do those steroids and keep playing. I think that's really solid that the Milwaukee community's backed him up on the pro-steroid campaign. So
I will say that if you're in fantasy, a quick note, and you really need a home run, just put whatever batters you have against Marco Estrada.
Yeah.
He has almost a 5 ERA and he leads baseball in home runs given up.
Which is sad because I watched him pitch in spring training and I don't mind him. I kind of like him, I think that he's not like blow away good, but I mean I felt like he was going to have a much better year than he's had. And this is really Gallardo's been somewhat injured, right?
He's been better than Garza. He has a 1.4 whip with 101 innings, which is actually more than Kyle Loesch. So he's hung in there all season.
Seems a little low.
Yeah, I mean, he averages 100 pitches a start, and, Loesch overall has had, stayed in games longer. But Gallardo has been probably their second best starter without question. Garza's been so up and down. At one point, he can look like their ace. The next game, he can give up 6 runs in 4 innings.
Yeah.
He's very frustrating as a former Ranger fan who had them and as a observer of Garza when he was on the Rays and the Cubs that I was because, the Mariners were interested potentially in trading for him. He has a very good stuff, and he just is not consistent at all in terms of Matt Garza. He's just not consistent, and it's frustrating.
Fastball's garbage is what it is.
Well, the fastball has good, velocity, but there's almost no movement. So if he doesn't paint the corners, it's going right down the middle, and he's giving up doubles and homers and solid singles, and it racks up quickly.
And guys can go yard on him easily.
So, looking at Milwaukee really quick, one last question before we move on to the division about the Dodgers and the Giants that is the NL West. When they make the playoffs, if you are them and then if maybe they make a wild card game or something, they're facing St. Louis, how worried are you when it's Kyle Loesch versus Adam Wainwright? Or it's Kyle Loesch versus, potentially on the Giants, Madison Bumgarner? Because Kyle Loesch has been good, but he is not a quote-unquote traditional number 1 true ace. Would you agree?
No, and the great thing about a guy like Lucroy is that he hides a lot of that over the course of a season. But it's not something that he can really save a pitcher from in a game. You know
exactly.
what And so I think you're really scared. I think you're almost hoping in the back of your mind that Nelson really balls out and maybe he can be that guy, which is crazy.
Well,
but
he was never thought of as a top, 25, 30 guy like a Sonny Gray was.
He has really good stats though in AAA.
He does, but he was always a top 50 guy in terms of, Keith Law, Jason Parks.
Right.
So, shout out to them. Whereas Sonny Gray was always a top 20 guy, and he's shown it in last year's postseason and all of this season.
Yeah.
So, really quick, one last question. Lucroy Gomez, MVP of the Brewers.
I'd say Lucroy because of all the extra defensive value, and Gomez is having a good year.
Oh,
but Lucroy's having a better year.
What's interesting is Gomez actually, you could argue, was better last year, and I would still take Gomez because
Gomez was like freaking hardcore amazing last year.
He was better than McCutcheon. He just didn't have the team record to back it up for the MVP vote, which is understandable. Not to say McCutcheon was bad. But I just wanted to give them both a love. And Scooter Gennett has been fantastic in replacing Ricky Weeks. And Ricky Weeks is having a very solid year in platoon with Scooter Gennett. His power's still there. Obviously, he never reached his potential, but the Brewers are a very fun team to watch hitting-wise. Chris Davis, Mark Reynolds, great power. Ryan Braun is always interesting, and they're a fun team to watch.
I like the Brewers. They're playing a lot better than they looked on paper at the beginning of the year.
Moving on to the last division, the NL West. Right, as of right now, the San Francisco Giants have a 1.5 lead on the Dodgers, and the San Diego Padres somehow are the third team in the division, 11.5 games back of San Francisco. So pretty much, it's one of these two teams are going to win the division, and one of the other two teams has a very good shot at the wild card.
Yeah.
So we're kind of mainly going to focus on these two teams for obvious reasons. And let's start with the Giants, who started off really hot, cooled down, but have also been picking it back up lately.
Yeah.
Tim Lincecum has kind of had a little bit of a rebirth. Mike Morse has had a very solid season. Kung Fu Panda is starting to heat up. Buster Posey has been down, but still a very good player. Angel Bacon was really good before he went on the DL. Their pitching has been surprisingly better than you expect because of Tim Hudson. Madison Bumgarner has really ascended to become the ace of the staff, as I was a year early on, as you would know.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to win the Cy Young last year, but he's kind of in the running this year, but definitely behind the pack because of how good Kershaw and Wainwright are. Lincecum had the no-hitter, which was fun, but a lot better than his last one against the same team, but also followed that up with another couple starts that was very good.
Yeah, no.
Vogelsong has settled down a bit, but in terms of the Giants, back-to-back years, Matt Cain has been very bad. With that, how bad is that contract if he doesn't rebound? Because it's been very bad so far the last 2 years.
It's gonna be a big detractor for them, but
did it just replace the Barry Zito contract in terms of really bad contracts?
I don't think it'll be that bad. But
their stats are similar as of the last couple seasons.
They are, but I still think that I don't know. I'm not giving totally up on Cain yet. So, but man, that's a really good question because personally, I feel like the Giants have the depth in their farm system to really supply their pitching staff. So that
Casey Crick has been a very solid performer in Double-A, and I think he recently moved up to Triple-A, or he's on his way.
Yeah, he's been good, and obviously, when they made that Zach Wheeler trade a couple years ago, you knew that they felt very strongly about their pitching depth to let him go to make that title run.
I feel like Bumgarner had a ton to do with that.
Oh, yeah.
And he's proven to be the ace of the staff.
And the fact that, they still really believed in Lincecum.
Yeah. Matt Cain was obviously a top-line pitcher at the time.
Right. Which I still think he has that in him. I just think that he's just going through some stuff.
Interesting tidbit about this team. No one reliever starter has a K9 over 10. That's very interesting. When you look at a lot of the other top teams, they almost always at least have a reliever who's a major strikeout guy.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, which is very interesting. Look, I would have expected Bumgarner to be over that list. And I also would have potentially expected someone like, even though he's had a very, very, very down year ERA-wise, Sergio Romo still is a good strikeout guy.
Yeah.
Usually, and I feel like those strikeouts have also gone down with that ERA skyrocketing.
Yeah, that's a major reason why I would have to go with the Dodgers winning this division. I think they might actually run away with it at this point. I know the Giants have been kind of playing a bit better, but I don't know how long that's going to last. I think that Dodgers have an incredibly deep pitching staff. They have the best pitcher in baseball, and in my opinion, it's not really close. And it hasn't really been close for about 3 years now.
He should have won the Cy Young over Ari Dickey, who had an incredible year.
Yeah.
But Doesn't matter anymore, really.
Yeah, it doesn't. But I just think that he's the most amazing thing that happened. He's the Mike Trout of pitchers.
He's
Except
the
for he's
best
been doing
pitcher
it way
since
longer
he's
and
the best
quietly.
pitcher since Pedro and Randy Johnson in the early 2000s.
Yeah, but he's already better than
He's not better than Pedro.
I don't. I disagree.
That's a whole different podcast.
Second straight year of sub 1.8 ERA, which is
and Pedro did it in the steroid era.
That's
and
true.
how about Greg Maddux with like a 1.4 in 1995? But regardless, let's talk about this season and how
Kershaw could literally do it the next 5 seasons too. So
He could.
I mean, if he does that, that's incredible.
That's different. That's a different discussion.
Right.
But
yeah, but between there are just so many wild cards on that team. Like,
especially batting.
Batting is so deep on their team. I mean,
if they perform the way they're supposed to, though.
Yeah.
Because Adrian Gonzalez has had a down year. Yasiel Puig has fallen off. Hank Ramirez gets hit by a pitch every other game. Matt Kemp hasn't rebounded. D. Gordon's been one of the more surprising players on the team.
Right.
Their outfield is a fucking disaster. Their best outfielder is stuck in AAA, probably Jock Peterson.
Yeah.
For how good the pitching's been, their hitting has been very, very up and down, and it's concerning.
Yeah, it is very hit or miss, and you're right, it is very concerning. But they still have so many guys they can just randomly pluck out of their farm system. I know that a lot of people at this point expected Alex Guerrero to already be in the lineup and be doing some damage right now.
D. Gordon's kept him out.
Yeah, he has.
D. Gordon's been very improved.
And I think that a lot of people were hoping that Peterson was going to maybe get on the field, especially because a lot of people were thinking that the Dodgers are going to make one of those trades to get rid of an outfielder, dump a Kemp or eat some of the Crawford contract
or Ethier. I think
yeah.
Crawford was kind of unmovable, but Ethier and Kemp could have been moved before the year.
And now I think that they're just kind of at a crossroads, but I still think they have the depth and the talent of any other team. It's just they're having a little bit of trouble putting it together. A little disappointed by Brian Wilson this year.
He's been a disaster.
He has just been really bad, and it's kind of predictable.
Chris Perez has been very bad as well.
Yeah.
And then even if you look at
Kenley Jansen's been so
Kenley Jensen's ERA 3.32,
so good.
Maybe 2 runs higher than I've expected, but his K9 is almost 14.
Yeah.
That dude is insanely awesome, and his ERA does not display how incredible he is as a closer. That guy is almost untouchable. He's on Kimbrel's level.
I was very shocked to hear you say his ERA is that high.
Yeah, I said before the year, I thought he's going to be the best closer, and I still think he could be the best closer in baseball.
Yeah.
Like, he maybe has the best pitch as a reliever in that 98, 97 mile an hour cutter. There just moves everywhere. It's very fun to watch. Josh Beckett has had a very nice bounce back year, but he's coming off the DL, and he had a very bad start in his first start off the DL.
To fall off too.
Yep. Greinke has been very up and down.
Good, though.
His ERA is 2.9. He started off very hot, and he slowed down a little bit, and he's definitely stopped going as deep into games. Dan Herron had really fallen off, but Ryu has proven not to be a fluke. So,
that's a good contract for them.
You think the Dodgers are going to take this division?
I think so.
I could easily see that.
They just have so much depth in the. I think the Giants are a better cohesive unit.
Right.
But I just think that baseball's not always about that. It can be, as we saw with the Red Sox last year, but I just don't get that feeling this year from the Giants. Of course, they didn't really have it when they won either, so who knows? I just think the Dodgers are way too deep all the way around, and I'd just be way shocked. But if we're going to talk about the rest of the division, we can start talking about the guy who should win MVP this year, but because his team is fucking garbage, he has no shot to win it whatsoever.
I will say that...
Talking about the best hitter in baseball right now, Troy Tulowitzki.
I don't know if he's the best hitter in baseball, but he's definitely in the conversation. His home run splits are still an issue, but at the same time, if you're hitting like 420 at home, you can't completely discredit that. He has the second best WAR in baseball behind Mike Trout. Yeah. Which he may not hold that distinction because he just went on the DL. But still, he's been absolutely incredible, especially without Carlos Gonzalez, who missed a month and a half or so.
Yeah.
He's been very bad when he plays as well. And the Rockies started off very hot and slowed down big time. Justin Morneau has been a solid pickup for them, but he also is taking a lot of games off. Charlie Blackmon had maybe the best April in baseball and has pretty much been very slow after that.
Yeah.
Corey Dickerson's been very good. Nolan Arenado started off very good batting average wise and slowed down because he also missed another 6 weeks. And their pitching has been very bad, and that's kind of why their team isn't that good. Jorge De La Rosa has been their best starting as a 4.19 ERA. Brett Anderson couldn't stay healthy. Their bullpen hasn't been there. Their pitching has been predictably in Coors very bad. They need to call up Jonathan Gray in September to give their fans some hope.
They needed Butler to be better.
And Butler had one start, got rocked, and went on the DL and hasn't pitched since.
Yeah.
Which has been an issue.
Yeah, but man, I'm telling you, Troy Tulowitzki is having a great year.
Yeah, when he's healthy, that contract's such a bargain.
Yeah.
And speaking of bargains, Paul Goldschmidt has been one of the lone bright spots for the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's just been murdering the baseball. His home run numbers are a little bit down, but he has 38 doubles right now. This guy has an insanely high walk rate. He's one of the only batters on the Arizona Diamondbacks who are really super producing, especially since A.J. Pollock went down. And that's another team with absolutely horrendous pitching so far this year. They've had tons of injuries. Daniel Hudson got hurt. Even going back 3 years, Brandon Webb, one of the better pitchers in the NL, got hurt. His career completely got derailed. Wade Miley hasn't been as good predictably. Patrick Corbin got hurt when he was surprisingly really good last year.
They decided to be completely retarded and just trade Skaggs and Bauer.
For Mark Trumbo, who missed 2 months and is hitting 191 right now.
Instead of having a control guy who was a top 10 prospect at one point. Or
Both
20.
their shortstop prospects, Chris Owings and Didi Gregorios, haven't really produced that much. Their walk rates are bad. Owings hits 277, that's okay. But their home ballpark really helps his OPS. But Goldschmidt's been incredible, and their pitching's been just pretty much disastrous outside of, some of their...
garbage the whole Bronson Arroyo contract now they had TJ.
Yeah, which is weird because that was his first injury in like 10 years.
Ever.
Yeah. But ironically, the Padres, for how bad they are, especially hitting, their pitching, and Petco helps with this, has been surprisingly very good. Houston Street, before he got traded, had an incredible year. Joaquin Benoit is having a great year. Tyson Ross has been one of the more surprising pitchers in the NL. I was on him before the year, especially with my boy Andrew Kashner, who was incredible before he got hurt. Ian Kennedy's having a nice bounce back year. A lot of his damage is coming at Coors, though, which is something you gotta keep in mind. But batting wise, they have one good hitter on the entire team in Seth Smith, who's a platoon player. That's it. Cameron Maben just got suspended 25 games for amphetamines.
Yeah.
Will Venable has definitely fallen off this year. Everett
Grandal
Cabrera
has never really developed the way we...
Grandal, yep. And Yonder Alonso either didn't develop. Everett Cabrera, who looked really good last year before steroids, is hitting 219. And
they traded their possibly best player, Chase Headley, to the Yankees.
Who's also going to be a free agent and would have never re-signed in that team.
Which was smart, so it's not a bad thing.
But just how good has Tyson Ross been, quietly?
He's a big pitcher.
He's a big guy.
He's got a couple different pitches he likes to come at you with. I think, like you said, that the park helps a bit, and I also think that, when you go up against teams like the Padres, you tend to coast a little bit. So I think there's some of that involved a little bit, but I'm not trying to take anything away from him. He's had a good year, and I expect him to continue.
I completely agree. And now that we've wrapped up the division, let's go through the awards really quick, talk about some unheralded players, and maybe do, once again, another quick World Series prediction. Okay. So let's just jump right into Rookie of the Year. National League Rookie of the Year for you is...
Man.
I know who it is immediately for me, so, if you want me to go first, that's fine.
You go first, just because you already have it.
Right.
And I didn't know that was coming first.
Billy Hamilton for the Reds.
Yeah.
His power's turned up a little bit more than just expected. He's turning... his bat has started to develop a little bit. He's getting on base more. Obviously, the legs are a big advantage, although he's been caught more than ever so far. I think that's because a lot of people just know this dude's going to run immediately.
Yeah.
And his defense is starting to become world-class in center field. And a lot of it has to do with the speed, but that's irrelevant. If he has the speed right now and it's world-class right now, you can't discount that.
No, you can't.
So he's my National League Rookie of the Year guy, and I think he's going to run away with this award, and a lot of that has to do with kind of the Rookie of the Year class in the National League being very suspect. I don't know for sure if he qualifies, but my second pick might be Christian Yelich for the Marlins. I think he might have had too many at-bats last year, but in terms of a young guy who's really started to develop at the bat, Christian Yelich is going to provide a nice 1-2 punch with Mike Stanton moving forward, assuming they keep Stanton, which they really should.
Yeah. Man, this is tough.
Yeah, the National League is a lot harder because the AL is kind of a
Yeah.
runaway winner right now.
Man. That's really tough. I'm looking at the teams and I'm really trying to hone in my mind. Michael Wacha, you can't consider a rookie because he kind of came on late last year.
And he's
having
also
a really fantastic year.
Yeah, and he's also been hurt for almost a month now, and they have no idea when he's coming back.
Right. I mean, you could make the case that when Polanco's OBP was over 400 for 2 straight weeks, that he was gonna maybe make that jump.
He's definitely cooled down.
Too late, and
Alcantara for the Cubs has come up and had a very good, nice week and a half, 2 weeks, but he also has only been up for 2 weeks, and he can't really catch Billy Hamilton.
Can I just go out there and say Mike Olt with his 141 batting average, but 18 home runs?
He would be leading your Texas Rangers in home runs, by the way, just so you know. For how much you hate him, and he's not that good. But.
No, he's not. He can't even see. He said that. He's like, I can't see.
I just swing and hope I make contact.
Yeah.
And if I do, it's going 450 feet.
Man, I feel like, I guess Julio Teheran was rookie last year.
Yeah.
He's had such a good season.
Yeah, he is.
In
So,
his first full season.
Would you agree with Billy Hamilton?
Pretty
probably?
much. There's really not a lot out there to really say against him.
Right.
I mean, otherwise, yeah, just not a lot.
I will say that before Tanaka was out for potentially the whole year, it was a lot better race than the AL. But Jose Abreu was absolutely running away with this award, and it's not even close.
Dude.
So, Jose Abreu for you, American League. All right, let's move on. We will say that Jose Abreu is one of the funnest hitters to watch power-wise. We've seen the ballpark helps, but he's also right there with McGuire for setting all these home run records for most home runs in X amount of games.
Yeah.
So this guy is legit power. So let's move on to the fun one. This is, these are the 2 fun awards right now. The Cy Young and the National League. I'll let you go first.
Man. Obviously, it's a runaway, but...
Really? I disagree. At the moment, I disagree.
I think it's Kershaw without question.
The only reason I disagree is Kershaw's a better pitcher. I agree. Wainwright has thrown 40 more innings and only been slightly worse.
Kershaw
so you can't discount that.
A month, though.
Exactly. Which means that Wainwright has been more valuable because he pitched 40 more innings. Now, by the end of the year...
He's almost a run above Kershaw. It's kind of like...
Kershaw's like a 186. Wainwright's a 202. So it's not that huge of a gap.
No, it's
and
not.
I only give him the edge because of the 40 innings. As I said, Kershaw's a better pitcher. I think the 1-2 in the National League is completely clear-cut, though. Would you agree? They are the top 1-2.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
so...
Yeah, he is at 202. But at the same time, I feel like Kershaw has...
I feel like Wainwright cannot get hurt or slip up at all. Because of his innings lead, he has a potential, if he stays on pace with Kershaw, he could win it. But he can't slip up once.
If I'm a Cy Young voter, though...
I would go Kershaw, too, but...
And I see a guy who has 142 innings pitched and 120 Ks, and I look at the next guy and he has 100 innings pitched and 135 Ks. I mean, Kershaw could literally hit 200 Ks in the next, 45 innings.
Yeah, it's impressive. The American League, I feel like King Felix, non-homer bias.
Although
Cueto's been very good.
Slouch.
No, he's not.
If he keeps pitching this well, he could. If he stays where he's at and the other 2 fall off even a little bit,
his team's going to hold him back.
Yeah.
Voters still look at the team record in both these awards.
He's not in a good park either for that. So I mean,
he could get blown up at any time.
Yeah.
But American League, I go King Felix 1, Chris Sale 2, John Lester 3. That's my top 3. So I mean, I think you also lean Hernandez 1. And what would you go for your top 3? Because American League has a lot more pitchers closer bunched together because you also have Corey Kluber there, you have David Price there, you have other pitchers up there, Sonny Gray, Max Scherzer's leaking in the background. Who do you think is the Cy Young winner in the American League right now, off the top of your head?
Well, I mean, obviously I agree with you in that I think that Hernandez is having the best season. But Kazmir is really making a good run. We mentioned Lester's terrific K9 earlier. I am not. Maybe I'm missing something, but I don't not even seen your boy on this list.
Corey Kluber?
No.
He's ERA is
Sale
high.
must not have the innings to qualify.
Sale's a little bit behind on innings, but he also has like a 2 ERA, and he's just a little bit lower than Hernandez.
Yeah.
Chris Sale is the Kershaw of the American League in terms of having lesser innings than the top guy, but he's just as good, if not better.
Yeah. Than Hernandez?
Yes.
Yeah. Although I would take Hernandez without question.
I will say they
Chris
faced each
Sale
other
is
about
like-
a week and a half ago, and Sale outpitched Hernandez marginally, but
Yeah.
also lineup has a huge amount to deal with that.
Yeah. Tanaka's making a decent press there, but
he's out, so he
probably out for the
completely
rest of
doesn't
the year.
matter anymore.
So I kind of gotta say, I honestly have to say, I think it's Felix, and it's not really close. He's got 30 points better ERA than Casimir does, and he's got just as good of a K9, if not better, and he's literally the face of the franchise. Like, he's doing it with
Casimir's
all the pressure in
not
the world.
even the ace at the Oakland A's. It's Sonny Gray,
Yeah.
who's been very good, who's up in the
Casimir's
running
been
too.
the ace.
But not by much.
But
Sonny
he's
Gray's
not,
been good.
it's such a team thing that
And
it's
Jeff
like,
Samardz's there now too.
and they also have so much defensively to offer on their team that it's just kind of like, I don't know. You know,
Yeah.
the Athletics are the Athletics. You know, they just, everything comes with the asterisk with them, because clearly they do stuff differently.
Yep.
And clearly they know what they're doing. So, like, I'm not taking anything away from Casimir, but the dude had a 4 something ERA last year, and then he just comes to Oakland and balls out.
All right, moving on to the last award. In my opinion, the toughest of the 3 that we've talked about so far, the National League MVP.
That's tough.
Yeah, it's very tough. Tulo's missing some time, so that's going to count against him, but he's also probably,
His team's
he's
fine.
had the best year so far in the National League, in my opinion. Mike Stanton's been incredible. Andrew McCutchen's been right up there, of course, as well. Those, in my opinion, are the top 3. I think by the end of the year, McCutchen, with the team record and his performance, is probably going to be the leader, because Tulo could miss even more time, and Stanton's team isn't as good, and he gets walked so much it really hurts him in the RBIs. So I think McCutchen, as of right now, would be my pick to win it in the National League.
I agree with you, but I also think that depending on how the end of the season pans out, it's a 2-man race between McCutchen and Jonathan Lucroy right now. Because Lucroy is the most advanced catching framer in the league, and it's not really that close.
And he's the best hitting catcher in baseball.
And he's the best hitting catcher. And he is doing it and turning guys like Kyle Loesch into great pitchers.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, he had a good season in his last year with Molina, so clearly he can do that. But,
Right.
I mean, it takes a really good catcher to keep that going. And I think that Lucroy, without them, I think he's one of the best players in baseball this year.
Yeah, it's
He'd
hard
be
for
a
me.
top 10 positional player, probably, if you really broke it down.
It's hard for me just because I
Maybe.
think Carlos Gomez is the MVP of that team.
Yeah,
Not to discount from Lucroy, because I think they're both top 10 MVP candidates.
yeah.
I don't
I'm
know.
a
Huge Carlos Gomez guy.
I like Gomez. It just he doesn't work counts as much as I like him to, and so then all of a sudden, you know, he's jumping on the first 3 pitches almost every time. So he's not really like allowing his team to really see what pitchers have. He's not really working that pitcher as hard. I think a guy like Lucroy, who's guaranteed going to see 5 to 7 pitches every single time he goes up, that basically means one player is accounting for almost like 25 to 30 pitches from a pitcher per game. And that's something that has to be considered. Just throwing that out there. Perspective.
Also, I think the American
But at the
League.
same time, when you see Carlos Gomez run from center field to first base and make a play, you're like,
That's incredible.
why did you do that? You could have just thrown that or something else, but whatever. I guess you can make the pickoff attempt from center field,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
He's just one of those players who just makes crazy plays and really lights a team up. Or, you know, like,
Right. Yeah.
ignites
Exactly.
a team more so than I think Lucroy, the white boy, is doing.
I think the American League is an absolute runaway for Mike Trout. I think anyone else we talk about is fan service. He should have won, in my opinion, the last 2 awards. He didn't. That's
Should have
irrelevant
won
now.
the last one for sure.
Yep.
I think that Cabrera kind of deserved that, 'cause whatever, but...
I will say, so Mike Trout for me, and it's not even close, and I don't even think the number 2 person matters right now.
I don't think it matters.
Awesome. So we're going to move on. World Series picks. You go first, and I'll finish it out.
Man, that is tough. I'm going to end up going with postseason matchup of... Man, I really don't want to be wrong about this. Not even that like it matters, but I just don't want to be. You know, this is not my pick in the beginning of the year. I usually always stick with my picks. I think I picked the Cardinals and the Tigers at the beginning of the year.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it sounds like who I would pick. But now,
well, things change, you know.
Things change. I am gonna go Pittsburgh in the World Series in the National League.
Wow.
I just have a feeling about Miracle Run with them. Just think they have what it takes. And then I think that they're probably going to run into Oakland. And I think that the Athletics are going to take it.
Billy Bean gets his World Series finally.
Yeah, which sucks because I think the Pirates, I would really like to see them win too.
That'd be cool. Either team in that situation would be cool to see win. So is Oakland.
Yeah, that's true, but God, it's been, 91 since Athletics. I guess the Pirates won
Pittsburgh,
92.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah.
kind of the same thing.
As of
the
right,
Athletics have been better at points.
As of right now, I think I would go Detroit and Washington. And I think I would lean Detroit to finally get the World Series for their owner.
Yeah.
He's been trying so hard and overpaying everyone, going all the way back to Juan Gonzalez.
Yeah.
And I feel like Detroit, like we saw Verlander in the playoffs last year. If he all of a sudden was throwing 8 innings, 1 earned run, 10K, it wouldn't really surprise you.
Mm-hmm.
So I just feel like Detroit could lock it down, and they obviously have the hitting, and I feel like Detroit and Oakland are the 2 best teams in the American League. It's going to be one of those 2, and the National League is a bit more open.
Yeah.
And I just like what Washington brings to the table pitching-wise, and they have really good hitting as well.
Yeah, they do.
So I would go Detroit-Washington with Detroit winning. So anything else you want to add really quick? I just want to say, Jose Altuve, you're very awesome to watch.
I just want to say better luck next year, Rangers.
I want to say, Mariners, please don't trade for David Price, even though he's incredible.
Pick.
Go with Gallo. Awesome. Thank you all for listening, and we'll be back with more podcasts at the NBA next time, hopefully. Enjoy.